Good. So we are. Just stop share for a moment. Let me check up everybody. Hi Vivek. Good. Sharat, Divya. So we have 14 of us, right? Just waiting. So we will get going, guys. You know. Thank you very much for.
I guess Ravi, I was not audible. So life is good, life is beautiful.
Hmm. Francis, I'm getting some trouble with your audio. I'm not able to hear you very clearly. Can you all can you all hear me clearly, guys? If you can give a thumbs up or yes or a no.
Yeah, yeah, we can. No issues at all.
Yeah, we can hear you
Yes.
fine so
Right.
far.
Super. Okay. So great, guys. So a few things. How have you been? How has it been for you? The last session on emotional agility probably was a little heavy, right? Or have you started? We had lots of useful conversations going during the a couple of on the WhatsApp chat. So how has it been? So what are you doing differently now? Anything that you want to kind of chat about?
Having some net issue. I'm having some
Yeah,
Audio is not
yeah.
clear.
Audio isn't clear, Francis. Okay, I think he'll rejoin. Yeah. In the meantime, guys, if you have started thinking, implementing a little bit from the emotional agility thing, trying to do something a little more consciously now than you were doing before. Anything of that type? Anybody? Manidipa, Divya. I don't know if Divya, you attended, right? I mean, last session. Deepti, Chandrakant. Anything that you are doing, anything that is one message that has remained with you from the last session? I know 15 days is a long time.
Well, I'm learning to manage my reaction to my emotions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reactions to your emotions. That's a very
Yes.
important thing, right?
Yes.
That's a very important thing. Good. Thank you for sharing that, Kakoli.
What
Anybody?
I'm trying to do is being a bit more conscious about my surroundings as
Ravi
well.
from
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. Uh, yes, thank you, Vivek. About your surroundings. Francis, I'll come to you. Let Vivek finish. Yes, Vivek, go ahead.
Now, I was mentioning that I'm making a more conscious effort to be aware of my surroundings per se, especially after, I mean, obviously since working from home. At times, what happens is, although it is everyone needs to get used to it, there are times I sit in the puja room here, so my family keeps visiting inside, especially during weekdays when I'm in office hours. So at times I will get put off because of that, which is constantly happening for me. So I'm trying to kind of may have a more balanced approach towards that. And yeah, I mean those kind of things, small changes I'm bringing within myself as well. More so within the family setup, it's much better off than reacting. I'm just responding to the existing situation as such.
Yeah. So, this is a very common phenomena that some things tend to again and again, you know. Even if we tell our family or even if we tell people, there are some things, and each person has this. We call them as hot buttons or pet peeves, things which kind of make you feel disturbed. Now, with emotional,
Triggered.
yeah, with emotional agility, you should be able to observe them and see if you can react to them differently. The many more times you start reacting to them differently, the more you train your amygdala to start ignoring those signals. And after a point in time, your amygdala starts not perceiving those signals as threats or those stimuli as threats. So it
Mm.
starts perceiving them as, you know, somebody just trying to poke you. As a child, we know that, right? Somebody, when they try to make fun of us or poke us, we tend to,
React, or we'll react in a very negative manner and all. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And when you know that they're trying to make fun of you, you make a conscious effort. You don't react, and
Agreed.
again you don't react, and again you don't react. After a point in time, you become non-reactive to that particular thing because your brain,
You've trained that part of the brain. Okay.
yeah, the amygdala. Not that you have trained the brain to different. You have just trained your brain to ignore that kind.
That part, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. And it can be anything. Huh? I mean, those reactions can be created by anything. So good. So let's move to the topic of today's. I think we have the group here, right? So what we are going to do today is something very interesting, right? So I mean, something very. Uh, can you all see my screen?
Yeah, I
Yes,
can. Yeah.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Thank you. So we are going to be talking about personal productivity, right? And one of the things is, can you see this modern Nataraja, as I call him, right? This guy with all,
Ah, okay. Yeah, yeah.
you know why I'm saying modern Nataraja, right? I mean, if you look at the Nataraja's pose, you would typically see him in this avatar, right? I mean, and by the way, if you know. Nataraja is an avatar of Lord Shiva, and that was the avatar when Shiva became very destructive. He went on this dancing spree after something personal happened to him, and he was almost on the verge of destroying the entire universe. So there is a resonance behind it, and we will kind of discover that as we go through. But yeah, so how many of you relate to this picture? I mean, does this relate to you?
Absolutely. Very much. We keep juggling with a lot of things in life, so um, it clearly puts things in perspective.
So what comes to your mind? What is that one thought?
Multitasking, probably, or
So chat about that. If you can chat about that one word that comes to your mind when you look at this picture. What does it come to your mind? Is this guy productive? Give me some words that come to your mind. Hyper, multitasking, right? What more? Balancing, yes. Is he able to balance, Manideepa? Think about it. Not focused is what Francis is saying, yes. Right. Juggling, Rohini, right? Round the clock busy, right? Yes. Oppo A37FW, if you can rename yourself, I'm sorry, but um, can't identify you otherwise. Rohini says time management. Karthik says agile. Yeah, that's a very that's a very current word, right? To say he's very agile, right? Okay. Okay. Hi, Juliet. Thank you. Um, okay, I'll do the renaming for you, Juliet. So, Raj, can you just rename Juliet? It's done, right? So it's done. All right, super, good. Okay. So, is he productive? How would you rate him on a scale of productivity? Is this guy productive? What's your thought? You can come off and speak.
When he's managing, I mean, it looks like, nowadays everyone's life uh, revolves around all these aspects, what the picture is saying right now. So rating might be a bit difficult because everyone has their own priorities and everything to adjust which one has a bit more priority in all of them. What is more important? It might change on a day-to-day basis. There might be something important on one particular day, and after after a couple of hours, something else might take that priority. So it keeps changing. That's what I feel.
Right. Okay. Good.
Right. It could be a 50-50 situation because, as it has been mentioned that we're not sure of what productivity for this person is. But at the same time, yes, there could be a lot of compromises that he might be doing at this point in time just to make sure that all the boxes are checked.
Okay.
Right.
Great, Deepthi. I think
Uh,
the word that you used is compromises. Yes, Sharad, go ahead.
yeah, but to my knowledge, he will definitely not be productive, but definitely engaged. Because in my view, you need to take one task at a time and give your 100%, and then move to the next task. If you keep juggling too many things, then you feel that you are productive and you are engaged, but at the end of it, you end up redoing a lot of stuff and all.
Yeah, that's a very important thing, Sharad, that you are bringing up. He is engaged. Productive, we
Yeah.
don't know, and he might be productive in some of those things, and then uh, and he can probably be not productive in some other things. So, but all of you tend to resonate with this picture, right? This is the story of our life. Would you agree with that statement?
Can't agree more. Yes, at this point.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, let me, in fact, that is where we want to situate the conversation today. Um, at the end of the day, there are these various pockets which want us to be productive, right? There is this job that wants us to be productive. There is this family that wants us to be productive. There is this body of ours which wants us to give it the time it deserves. Then there is this mind which wants to kind of stay relaxed. And then there is this son, there is this relationship, there's this family, there's wife, there's our parents. We are playing so many different roles, and in every role, we tend to we are required to give our best, right? And at the same time, we are being kind of pushed and pulled in different directions. So the conversation of productivity is not just in the workplace. That's a very important thing to clarify to begin with. The conversation of productivity is not just one sided or one dimensional. Many of us tend to make it very one dimensional and try to be very productive in the workplace and let the other things take a little bit of a back seat, right? Is that good? Is that something that we can make good out of it? Can we do something about it? And how do we look at this entire whole self, right? The entire uh, persona that we have, and how do we kind of go about it? That would be the key focus for us today. So let's begin this exercise with a little bit of a, as I ask you, is this person productive? And you say, I don't know about his context, but you know about yourself, right? So you may not know about this guy, but I'm sure you know about yourself, and therefore you should be able to mark yourself. So what I'm going to give you is a little bit of a Menti poll, right? And if you just a second, right? So if I can just give you the Mentimeter link and see if you can take this link and go ahead and answer some of this, right? And open up some conversations for us. Okay. Okay. So take a look at it. Let me know if it is okay. If it is asking you for the password. If it is, then I'll just give you the password as well. Is it asking you for a password? If it is, then use this one.
It's a direct link otherwise.
It's a direct link otherwise. Yeah, it's a direct link. So once you start working on it, I will just quickly share my screen from there on. Right. Resume.
Is it not visible over the phone? So
I'm going
I'm
to,
not able to see it.
yeah, I'm going to make it visible to you. Give me a moment. I'm going to make it visible to you. Are you now able to see this? Right. So I've got 4 people till now answering.
Yes, yes.
Is it visible now?
Yes, that is visible.
Okay. Anybody has any disconnect or wants a little more information on any of the questions?
Basically, answer on the chat or like how?
You can just go to Menti and then you will be able to do it. I've given you the Menti link, right? If you just click on that link, it will take you there. I've given you the link on the chat. It should open up for you on a browser and you should be able to go there.
Yeah, it's opening, but it's very slow here.
Oh, okay. That could be an internet issue. All right. If you are not speaking, you can put yourself on mute. I'm getting some ambient noise.
Please, is this a 1 to 5 or a 1 to 10?
It's a 1 to 5.
Ah,
Yeah, if it's a 1 to 10, then, we would have had. Okay.
yeah.
So we have had 12 people, right? So let's, good. So we can take a quick 13 now. So how many of us are there on the call? We're like 18 of us. So if 18 minus 3, 18 minus 4. Yeah, I think it's good. So we will take this on, right? We will take this on.
So Ravi, Karthik here. I will give you a perspective like this is how I answered this Mentimeter.
Mm,
See, a day we are like working 12 to 15 hours. So in that we are in on the calls close to 9 to 10 hours.
mm,
So if I say we are busy, yes, we are busy because most of 80 to 90% of our time goes into the meeting. To
mm,
say whether we are productive, I would say no because we have very less time to action. We are just getting into the discussion.
mm,
I'm telling more on the official side, personal side, because of this COVID situation, everything has gone for toss. Nothing is like personal or official. It has now all come and coincide as one. So
mm.
that's the reason. Like we will say that we are very less productive, but we are busy all the time.
Okay. So that's a very interesting perspective. See, so, one of the key myths that we are trying to unravel for you, and good that Karthik, you did that already for us, is that busyness is not always equal to productivity. Right? We may be very busy, but we may not be highly productive. And the other thing that this particular poll unravels for you is productivity has got many different facets. There is productivity at work. There is productivity in building relationships, and then these building relationships could be at work, could be outside work, depending on where your focus is, right? Then there's productivity on keeping your loved ones and yourself happy, and then there is preparing for the future, right? All of this wholesale together kind of, has a role in making you come across as how productivity is. And productivity is not a very simple time and motion conversation as we would like it to be. How many transactions did you do in how much time? Or what is your average handling time of every transaction, right? Or how many tickets did you close? Or how many people did you teach? Or how many clients do you have? See, these are some of those measures that we create for ourselves, and we think that we are able to measure our productivity. But at another level, on a very personal level, you need to have your own personal measures of productivity. And I'm not saying that all the measures will remain the same over your lifetime, right? So I'm not trying to say that relationship should be 5 and your personal happiness should be 5. Nobody can. Do you think everybody can have everything at 5? Is it possible? Is it logical?
No, not
No,
possible.
not possible.
So at every moment you're making a choice, right? Now the point is, are you making a choice knowingly, or is this a choice that is being inflicted upon, like what Karthik said? So Karthik talked about the fact that we are on calls, but we are not always very productive. There are so many calls where we are just on the listening mode, right, Karthik? Or we are not just contributing much to it. Okay, so we end up being on those calls because we are asked to be. If we are not there, we cannot avoid, right, etc. And therefore we are not making a significant contribution, right? The effort from your end should be to identify how many of those calls are you taking every week, right? How can you make yourself more productive on those calls, or how can you make the best use of your time? I don't have an ideal answer to give you. See, you have your own work context, and all of us don't come from the same organization. There is no one size fits all answer that I can give you. All that I can, with this exercise, bring to you is this is how you are making use of your time, right? These are the choices you are making, and whether you like it or not, you are responsible for the choices you are making. Make sense? Okay. So therefore,
Yeah,
uh,
very much.
yeah. Anybody has any thoughts? Which of these are probably a very important thing for you? What was, the any revelation that came to you from this? You should be focusing on this, but you are not doing it. Any other thoughts that came to you?
I think your point on productivity of in building relationships, I have never thought of that till late, honestly. I didn't. I mean, that question was good, by the way. So I don't know about productivity through relationships. Probably that's in one way related to networking, if I can say. I don't know if that's related to networking, which I'm very poor at. But yeah, I thought that question relates to that kind of an aspect of networking in such, right? Because, but there is a nice question, which the others I could obviously relate to it and answer, but
Yeah.
that one was kind of new.
Yeah. See, that is in fact that is one of those questions that I have often seen people asking me, why are you putting productivity vis-a-vis relationships? What has got relationships to do with productivity? And you will probably realize that productivity has got to do a lot with relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
Relationships with your peer, relationships with your family,
Family, yeah, yeah.
relationships with your loved ones. You are, say, a highly productive guy at work, but you're not able to keep your family happy. Would you consider at the end of the day very productive? You know what I mean to say,
Mm-mm-mm.
right?
I understand. Yeah, yeah.
We have been in a way very schooled to think about productivity in a very narrow manner. That
And it's more corporate like as well. It's more related to the corporate sense of productivity, like
yeah, yeah.
generally I'm saying, yeah. But your point is valid, yeah.
Right, you're right. But then, and that corporate sense of productivity is hinged upon a job title, a hike. And sometimes when we don't get that, we are at a loss, right? And people feel very, very, they lose balance, right? So that is a very important element that, and that in itself becomes the biggest contributor to their identity.
Mm-mm.
How happy they are depends upon whether they were a GM, whether they were a VP or an AVP, whether they were a director or not. I mean, that's one dimension of your life, right?
Indeed.
What legacy have you left behind? So that is the other dimensions of life that we might need to explore. Therefore, that takes us to a much more important question, and I would like you to, report on chat on this, right? How can you make yourself more productive? If you were to give me three words or two words that would tell you how can you make yourself more productive, number one. Number two, how do you define productivity, therefore? Do you define it only in terms of your ability to do work in the office? Do you define it only in terms of who you are at your workplace? Or do you have a larger, broader frame of reference when you talk about productivity? Okay. Shija, you want to add something to that? Right?
Well, yeah, and another thing that perhaps one must be also aware of is that there are cultural dimensions to it as well.
Okay.
And we come from a collective culture, we are a community culture. right? When we're talking about India and most of the East Asian countries. So our relationship with time and tasks is very strongly bound to our our relationships in terms of family, people, how we connect with people. So time is generally, I mean, when we talk about how we do things, we tend to put people first over tasks and time, and that's part of our national culture, right? And that's also an element that we have to be aware of, especially when we are working in a in an environment which is multicultural, right? You might uh, feel that the way you react to tasks and deadlines may be different from how somebody from a different culture reacts to it.
That's a very,
Oh, sorry. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead, Vivek.
I probably have a question. I think Sheija is making a very good point here. Will it also relate to the age group wise as well, Sheija? Obviously, the productivity could vary apart from the cultural aspect as well, which you referred to.
It is.
I'm sure it does. The cultural aspect, of course, is already well researched. There is something called as the Hofstede, National Cultural Survey, which was conducted, and you can actually go and check about each and every country and how we relate to some of these dimensions. But about the age thing, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking younger people tend to have a more short-term focus than long-term focus.
Hmm.
Uh, they're more into instant gratification, so that might have a bearing. That might
Okay.
have a bearing on how they make choices about time and tasks.
Hmm.
Mm.
So one of the things that, just to kind of make it a little graphic, if you were to see, one of the things that the lot of the Western cultures tend to do is they tend to look at time more as a linear line, it's
Right,
a straight line, and there are these different tasks which form as different points in that line, right? Whereas the Indian cultures tend to look at, time more in terms of circles. So one
hmm,
circle which overlaps circle which overlaps into another circle. So you have home. So at home, at office also, you might be booking a couple of tickets for your journey. At home also, you might be doing a little work for your office. So your boundaries are not so neatly divided, right? So
right,
we tend to associate the notion of productivity with the notion of hierarchy. Right. So if the boss asked me, how can I not do it? If my dad asked me, how can I not do it? You get what I'm trying to say. And the last
right,
person who's very important to you is you yourself. We tend to underplay the relevance of the individual need. Whereas that's what Shija was talking about as the collectivist mentality. In a collectivist culture, the everybody else matters. The family matters, the society matters, the tribe matters, the country matters, everybody else matters. When you talk about yourself, you are considered to be selfish. So you are not supposed to talk about that, right? Your happiness takes the biggest back seat, and therefore everything else matters. Whereas in an individualistic culture, what matters is I is the unit of productivity, the individual, and from there on everything else starts. Reverse process. So that is, so what I would like you to think is, what is your definition of productivity? How do you think is your definition different? Anybody wants to talk about it? How do you define productivity? Yeah, for me, taking care of my health will make me okay. So I can see some of the chats coming through, right? So, you know, just a second. Okay, let me pick up some of the chat that's coming through. Okay, okay. All right. Shija, can you see some of the chats and read for me? I'm somehow not able to.
yes, sure.
From
Um, so Karthik says he feels productive when he makes a positive impact in others' life,
okay.
and Francis says that being good at wheel of life in all the areas of life.
Okay.
Kakoli, for her, it's to feel a sense of satisfaction after doing a particular work, not necessarily anything big or huge.
Hmm. Hmm.
And Francis also added that taking care of his health and making him more agile.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Chandrakant says, schedule the day and keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chandrakant, we have been scheduling our days. We have been trying to keep it simple. You know, how would you rate yourself? Where would you rate yourself?
Um, I mean, I would rate myself around, as per it, around 4, because
Hmm.
it's time bound. From the day start to the end, I have fixed things in mind, at what time, schedule, and everything. So I go by it. I change it in between if required. If I have to jump onto something else, I keep doing it. But more or less, as I typed, I just want to, keep it simple and not doing, too many things, which is not necessary at all the times.
Right. Which is a very good way of thinking about it. So allow us to share with you. I think a few thoughts today, and we will do that. But before that, if I were to go back to the first question that I asked you, and I'm trying to pick up some threads on that, um, what is it that you can do to make yourself more productive? Given your current state, right? What is it that you can do? One or two things that you think you can do. You have, I mean, we are emotionally agile people, I'm assuming. You know what makes your brand now, right? So, if you were to be able to do a couple of things that can enhance your productivity, what would they be?
Probably learn something new. I mean, that's what I've been spending a lot of time for the last couple of months, apart from my routine work, which I have been doing for the past many years. So trying to, read many things, or, want to learn something new. That's one aspect. One of the aspect was, because our work is scheduled in such a way that, most of us don't spend a lot of time with the family. For some good or bad, I would say that, COVID has given an opportunity after many years. Everyone has got time to, at least spend with their parents, with the family and with the kids. That's one thing I really liked about it. I understand the other, aspects about it. Um, Trying to see that, how I can make my kids, more happy. That's one thing. I tried doing, uh, playing with them more often. Try and take some time out, in between the work, and, try and sit with them and understand, because they are also seeing throughout the day. That's something I'm really enjoying, and, experiencing something new every day. That's what, uh, my thinking going around right now.
Good. So yeah, I think COVID has changed a lot of things, and in fact, a lot of conversation is now kind of getting positioned because of COVID, right? So one of the things that we have started, and this is, I mean, I see a lot of you talking about sharpening your skills, becoming more organized, be more transparent with your communication, time management, goal setting. Rohini is talking about striking a balance between the priorities. So, it all brings to me, and sorry if I'm sounding it this way, it brings to me my own New Year resolutions, right? So for last couple of years, I've stopped making those resolutions. Can you guess the reason why?
It never happens.
Yeah. So one thing I understood is that it has become a ritual without meaning, right? So you sit down and you kind of reflect on the first day of the year. What do you want to do? But then you quickly tend to forget it. The Nataraja takes over from the second week of January, and then life starts taking its own rough and tumble, right? So therefore, I thought that we need to do something which is slightly more different. And both Shija and I kind of cohered on this research, and I want to share with you this, right? So, who do you think are human beings losing their relevance to now? Who's your biggest threat for your job? Who's the biggest threat for your,
Machines probably.
you know? We keep on
Probably
talking.
tech, probably
Technology, yeah, technology,
technology itself.
technology.
Yeah,
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Technology itself, right?
itself.
Yeah. So anything that is scalable and repeatable is getting automated.
Yeah. Or it's getting replaced.
It is getting replaced. So you and I are not required to do that. So, a lot of customer service jobs are getting replaced by chatbots, and, people tend to reach the people who are in the BPO will agree with me, or non-BPO guys also. It takes you almost 9 clicks to reach the Airtel agent for a call. Before that, there are so many options. They try to resolve it that way itself. What I'm trying to put across to you is there is a set of jobs which are going away from us, and there is a set of jobs which will remain for us. Okay? So, what are those jobs which will remain for us? What are those jobs which are taken away from us? And where are we spending our time? Right? So that's a very key question that comes to us. And this is where I would like to share with you this newest piece of research that has come from this guy called Cal Newport. And I am going to share with you the summary of the book in the WhatsApp group in days to come. So Cal says that there are two kinds of work human beings do, are of doing. He broadly defines it this way. He says the first set of work is what he calls as deep work. And it is not very new. When you look at the definition, it's not very, it's not very earth-shatteringly new. But he splices this up with some recent work on neuropsychology, and talks about it in a. So he says the deepest works are those activities which are performed in a distraction-free environment with a higher level of concentration, which requires greater effort. Whereas shallow work is regular routine work, gives you a sense of busyness, and often can be multitasked. Right? They may not have such great impact, and they create a false impression of progress, connectedness, and action. Okay? In your own mind's eye, I'm sure you are able to spot some of the deep work and some of the shallow work. Yes? No? Are you able to spot some deep work, some shallow work?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, yeah.
Can you give some examples, Vivek?
I will relate to the professional space only, obviously. So I kind of currently do work which warrants me to do a lot of data analytics.
Hmm.
Uh, and generally, I tend to do it when I am not actually in my core work, because that enables me to do a lot of presentations to senior management as well. So that for me is deep work, because that requires me to put a lot of skill to use lot more cognition in general for me to come up with the results and everything. So for me, that is deep work. But there'll be other things in my day-to-day chores in office which I'm doing, which is like run of the mill kind. I mean, there is like I'll be doing some action and there'll be some result, but it may not necessarily help me or make me feel that I'm productive. But I have to do it. I don't have any other option. I have to get that done as well. So that I do. So the deep work is something which I gave an example of, and I think I just want to point out something. I don't know whether this is true or not. For I don't know how others feel, but for me, generally, I do my deep work um, when there's no one around per se. Or I mean, right now, obviously, no one is generally around me. I mean, officially as well. I mean,
Hmm.
no one there. But generally, I prefer doing it. Like if I get those 2 hours, I'll be more productive than probably even if I spend an 8 hours to get that work done. I always have that kind of a thing. So
Okay. Yeah, that's a very valid point, and just make a note of that, Vivek. I'm going to come back to that because
mhm.
deep work cannot be done as in it cannot be done at the beck of a call,
Mhm.
right? It requires a certain environment. It requires a certain
True.
setting. In Hindi, the word is mahol, right?
Okay.
An environment in which you can do the deep work. You cannot do the deep work anytime and every time.
True.
Um, so if you look at it, what are some of the what are some of the deep work which cannot be automated, which machines cannot take over?
Wherever you need,
Yeah,
A bit of
human,
emotion. Sorry.
yeah, sorry, yeah, with human interaction, or wherever you mean that there is a human requirement is there that cannot be replaced at any means. But we might get automated on most things, but we still need human beings to do some tasks, which will always remain actually.
And um, for example,
For example, Ravi, decision making in an exceptional situation, which is not what is something that machine learning can learn. Making a decision.
yeah, yes and no, Rohini, because machines are learning more and more decision making. So if you now see there are like there are these self-guided they decide which missiles which decide where to strike. You get what I'm trying to say. So yes, that is a
Yeah.
continuous process, but a higher form of decision making we human beings hope will always remain with us, right? What else can be a source of deep work? Think about it. Human beings need this and still will continue to go, right? Have tape recorders or vinyl records or compact discs or Spotify for that matter replace the need for going to a concert,
no,
No.
right?
no.
Do
So
people
deep work, whichever requires human relationship and where emotional quotient is needed to manage people, build relations, and all to get to extract work from people,
yeah,
and to apply cognitive skills.
yeah.
You require that's part of deep work. Yeah.
And which one is more paying, by the way? Deep work or shallow work?
Deep work, if you are really interested or it's of your interest, then obviously deep work will be exciting. But at the same time, if it's not of your interest, then deep work, which may be painful as well. Similarly for shallow thing.
No, I'm saying it's more paying in terms of money. Uh, if you were to typically look at it. See, because say, for
Yes,
example, when
yes.
you write the first code,
Deep work, deep work, you get paid more, obviously.
yeah, yeah. So, we know it is more paying. We know it is actually what makes us productive. It is actually what is the need of the day. And we privilege the fact that we are good at multitasking. Are you seeing uh, the fallacy here? We write on our CVs, we are very good at handling multiple projects at the same time. We are very good at multitasking. We can do 10 things at the same time. And yet we are saying that deep work is what is more paying, which is actually makes us, which differentiates our brand from others, which actually makes us who we are, and is going and is something that will keep us afloat even if machines take over most of the stuff. So painting, say for example, you would still like to, an MF Hussain original is still going to be priceless, right? Or a Quentin Tarantino movie, though there is latest technology, the movie making direction is going to be priceless. A.R. Rahman creating music is going to be priceless. Now all this is deep work, right? You get where I'm coming from. Or say for example, writing a new code, right, or creating the newest supercomputer is going to be priceless. Inventing something is going to be priceless. And yet we consider that multitasking, doing three chores at the same time, is going to be is something that we pride over. Are you seeing the kind of binds we have created for ourselves? Right?
Yeah, yeah,
See, I mean, people are privileging multitasking. Multitasking essentially is shallow work, right? You cannot multitask. Say, for example, you are driving first time on the Ghat roads. You may not want to even listen to music. You want to dumb down everything and be very concentrating on the roads, because one small mistake might mean the difference between life and death, right? You get what I'm trying to say? You may not want to WhatsApp when you are listening, sitting in a classical music concert. Imagine people who are WhatsApping next to you, how distracting they are. Right? And yet we think that multitasking is the flavor of the day. This is the first myth that I want you to take a sharper look at. Is multitasking what is going to help us stay productive? Or is there something more than multitasking required? Right? I want to kind of take you to this video, and then we will come back to this topic a little bit, in time. Okay. So just give me, so again, up your volumes, right? And then I'll just play this video and I'll stop in between, come back to discussion, and again we will resume it. Okay. Up your volume, please.
Deep work. As described by Cal himself, deep work is professional activity performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that pushes your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. 1 to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week of uninterrupted and carefully directed concentration can produce a lot of valuable output. As a consequence, the few who cultivate the skill of going deep and then make it the core of their working life will thrive. The ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare at exactly the same time it is becoming increasingly valuable in our economy. It's because every day we are bombarded with emails from coworkers that expect us to answer them immediately. Bosses want us to work in open offices with massive distraction all around us. So Cal argues that this type of work doesn't allow us to go deep. He calls this type of work shallow work. It's non-cognitively demanding, often performed while distracted, doesn't create much new value in the world, and is easy to replicate. There are two core abilities for thriving in today's economy: the ability to quickly master hard things and the ability to produce at an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. But to learn hard things quickly, you must focus intensely without distraction. If you're trying to learn a complex new skill, like programming, in a state of low concentration, for example while having your Facebook feed open, you're firing too many circuits simultaneously and your brain can't focus properly. This is called attention residue. Let's say you're working on a deep work project, for example writing an article, and you happen to glance at your email box and you see a few emails that need answering. Now, even if you return back to your deep work, you're going to be producing at a much lower rate of cognitive capacity because there has been a residue on your attention from that quick distraction. When you switch from task A to another task B, your attention doesn't immediately follow. Even if you finish task A before moving on, your attention still remains divided for a while. So to produce at your peak level, you need to work for extended periods with full concentration on a single task, free from distraction. No emails, no Facebook, no co-workers asking you what they should eat for lunch. There is a way to incorporate deep work and escape the constant distraction. Here are a few strategies.
Ravi, there's no audio.
Is the audio on now?
Yes.
Okay. So I said, let's stop here, and I'll kind of come back to this. If you typically look at, what are your takeaways from this? I mean, can you do deep work? Is it important for you? What is its relevance for you? Or why are we not able to do deep work as much as we want to?
Because the what I have noticed is the attention residue, very important, because we tend to, to be honest, we keep checking multiple, pages, applications. We keep open on our system, and though we know we are set to do one priority work, but we still keep checking everything, thinking that there might be something important which has landed in the inbox. You might need to action that, or you might keep checking some other information parallelly on the other websites as well for something else. I think that's a very big distraction, and I think that's a key takeaway. I think I would take it. To prioritize things when you're working on one thing, just keep it to one, and not get to something else.
Yep. You know, research shows that we suffer from this, the current generation, we suffer from this a lot. It's called FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? The fear of missing out. Constantly, we try to be on the top of things, right? We are constantly trying to leverage various kind of gadgets, and our life is governed by that, uh, and and that's what it is. So what we are trying, there's this morbid fear, and people's sleep patterns have started suffering. I personally faced this the first time that I was given a BlackBerry by my organization. You remember the BlackBerry in its earlier days used to do this ting sound, yeah, something similar to the sound that you heard now. Every time there would be a mail that would come through, and I had this thing that I would get up in the middle of the night and try and answer that mail. Not that it was just, and almost all of us got into this rat race of how quickly we were answering mails, because companies had given us BlackBerry. They wanted us to be the new age Nataraja, right? So we quickly realized that this was taking a huge toll on the way we were productive through the rest of the day, because the sleep patterns had started getting depraved. We were kind of getting very, very shallow sleep, if you may like, and next day morning we ended up with headaches, a hangover without drinking, if you may like that. So it was called the BlackBerry hangover, right? So, I mean, can you think of something like that that is happening in your workspace? Something that keeps on distracting you all the time?
You pointed out one of the most important thing. Once we have this access of accessing email on the mobile, which now each and every employee in almost all the organizations have this feature, and you tend to though after you finish your office, as soon as you see there is some mail or some message which has popped up, it keeps showing you on your mobile, and there is something you want to open it up and read everything, and most probably there are few things you want to reply, there are few things you just want to read and just delete. So there is a curiosity which we do, and even though if you tend to wake up for some reason in the late night or in the midnight, uh, now we start checking our mobiles to see that if there is anything. So this is just becoming a habit, or it has become a habit, I would say.
So I'm not prescribing, or me and Shija, we are not prescribing anything to you, because we do coach a lot of leaders, and we see that, they really do not have the attention span to focus on relationships. They do not have the attention span to have a one-on-one for 60 minutes. Even with a paid coach like us, and we don't come cheap when we are talking to them, they kind of get distracted. And if they are getting distracted to us, we just imagine what would they be doing when they're talking to their direct reports, where there is a hierarchy involved. Are they giving you that, unalloyed, unmixed 1 hour of time or 30 minutes of time in a one-on-one conversation? Or is it one amongst the many things that they're doing in the 30 minutes? You get where I'm coming from, right? Okay. So this is something where you need to question what is productivity for you. What is productivity? Is it going to make you more productive? Is it going to make you more, is this kind of shallow work, right? If you may like, answering that mail, yes, approval, approved. Is this something that is going to make you do that, right? Am I making, resonating with you, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So is it necessary for all of us? Is it required to answer that SMS. And by the way, it is just not happening to corporates. It is happening to all of us. Some of us are busy answering emails, others are busy answering WhatsApps. And then the WhatsApp university's learning takes over. We just miss out if we are not the first to forward that message to somebody else. And by the end of the day, you see that the same message has come back to you from 3 different sources with the same photograph, right? Am I,
Yes,
have
yes.
you seen that happening,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah.
Therefore, if you typically look at it, this is what is eating into your time. It's like the Trojan, right? It's like the Trojan. So if I were to take you to, the next phase of it, and um, typically look at this, see the human brain, if you may look at it very quickly, is programmed to do deep work only for a very short period of time, by the way. Here is the other big thing. The biology of deep work is very restricted because deep work does not happen with the entire brain in place. The rest of the brain is like the storage device which stores long-term memory. Right? The short-term deep work happens through the prefrontal cortex. Right? What we call as in Hindi the word is takdir. So if you are not concentrating, you are actually not taking care of your takdir, or the other word in English is luck. So nobody says takdir is here, by the way, right? They say that the takdir is here. Have you seen that? I don't know if they knew neurology or not, but they always say that God wrote on your forehead. He did not write on the back of your head. I don't know why he did not, but he also knew that deep work can only be done here. So if you typically see, the prefrontal cortex can do deep work, and it can do deep work only for 4 hours maximum. This is what Carl Newport's research is showing, which means you can't do deep work for more than 4 hours. In that 4 hours, if you are checking all those FOMO devices, right, WhatsApp, etc., etc., then where is the chance for you to do deep work? Right? And you are naturally, this is one of the things that keeps on driving us to the bottom of the pyramid, and we try to climb up with, it's like that cat or that dog which keeps on trying to run on that wheel but never crosses over to the other side, because what we are doing is eminently multitasking and shallow work, right? So what I would like you to do is,
Ravi, I have a question here, if you don't
yeah,
mind. Sorry to interject.
go ahead.
Now, so this 4 hours duration that you're referring to obviously is at various it's various points in time in a day, right? That's how it is. Could be.
Depends upon people. Some people create rituals of doing deep work
Yeah, okay.
early in the day. Some people keep on create a ritual of doing deep work late in the night. And by the way, we have done deep work. As a student, you knew which is the time when you studied and you remembered the most.
Early in the morning, for me at least.
Ah, for me, it was never early in the morning. I was sinus ridden, so it was always late in the night. Right? So you can, I mean, I'm sure all of us have had our times of deep work, right? So what I would like you to think is, see which is that, and by the way, deep work time is like prime time television. You should never give it away. The rates are very high. 9 o'clock, when the nation doesn't want to know, right? Ads get, you know, uh, priced at a very high price. So you should never give away your prime time to anybody. You should keep it for deep work. Give the shallow work time to everybody. Have all your meetings after lunch, no problem. Anyway, the brain goes into a little bit of a, slow-mo mode. Okay, so I don't want to make you feel like a neuroscience junkie, but at the same time, it's important. So here is where I need you to have your pen and paper up. All of you have got some pen and paper with you? Yes, no?
Yep.
Yes, we do.
Superb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, can you make a list of 12 to 15 tasks that you do throughout the day, regular day, on a regular day? And it could be as mundane as brushing your teeth, washing your clothes, washing your hair, whatever, cleaning your room, to something more like reading about Eric Siegel, right? Or whatever else is your choice of read or listening to music or whatever, right? Make a list, right? The first question, right? Make a list of all the things as you can. Try to be as random as you can. No problem. Have you got 10 or 15 of them by now? You may not want to write elaborate sentences, but you know, one of the things that I used to do when I used to do this session on a face-to-face mode is I would ask my group, "Have you reached lunchtime? Okay, then have you reached tea time? Have you reached evening? Have you reached home?" So So where are you now? Breakfast? Are you done with your breakfast? Have you reached
No,
lunchtime?
just lunch. I have reached lunch already.
Okay, you have reached lunchtime. And what is your list telling you, Juliet? How many?
It's very like day-to-day daily work for me.
What is the
It's
number?
like,
Have you numbered them? Number them.
hello?
Very important. Number them. One, two, three,
Yeah,
four.
I till lunch, like I have numbered them 7.
Okay. So take another 2 minutes and let's quickly reach evening tea.
I have done something different. I have done preparing breakfast, lunch, and dinner serially,
It's okay. It's okay. That's fine. That's fine. It's just that if you're able to map your entire day, I'm happy. I have had people who say cooking on Sundays.
Add me to that list.
Good. So the next piece of task is very simple. Amongst them, which of them are deep work and why? Amongst them, which of them are shallow work and why? So put a D behind the deep, put an S against the shallow work, whatever is your total number.
I'm confused now. Actually, preparing breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the family is deep work or shallow work, yeah?
It depends upon what is the thing that you are serving, Kakoli. If it is your
Huh.
regular meal, then it is shallow work.
Okay.
If exotic that you're preparing because
Then it
you're,
becomes deep.
yeah, then
Oh,
it is.
for me, it's every day. It's deep work, yeah. This lunch, dinner, and breakfast part, yeah.
So
Okay.
that is so that is your deep work.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, breakfast, lunch, and dinner can really be deep work because there are,
And
occasions
Shija, we
where
have to think also a lot, no? Every morning,
absolutely. Yeah, I look at the vegetable basket and think, what should I prepare for lunch and what for dinner and what for breakfast? Yeah, that is, so it's deep work. Yeah, lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
deep thinking goes into it. Yeah.
absolutely. And especially if you're trying to serve something that's healthy, that
Yeah.
meets everyone's taste and
Yes.
yes,
And
Yeah,
my 3 people, they need 3 different things. 2 boys and the husband. So it becomes very, very deep work indeed. Yeah.
yeah. It's all about the fear of missing out. FOMO. Okay.
So Ravi, I would openly admit 100% is my shallow work. There is no deep work.
Come on, Karthik. You're being too harsh on yourself. You're being too harsh. There must be something, right, that you do which is deep work, right? There must be something. But okay.
or perhaps you have put down something which is actually deep work as shallow work.
Yeah, you have not. You have not.
Because uh, yeah, I think there is also this negative connotation that we are kind of giving to this word shallow doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Shallow just means that our cognitive abilities are not exercised so much. It's something that we are able to do quite easily, automatically, right? It doesn't require
Yeah,
too much creativity.
yeah. And by the way, yeah, the human being has its own capacity to utilize. I'll give you an example
Hmm.
of this, okay? And this is, I think you can relate to this. Have you ever seen people planting rice or working on farm? Rice has to be planted twice. Once it is,
Hmm.
then it kind of goes. So, women who typically do this job, especially in the eastern part of the country, have got lots of what we call as rice planting songs, right? Because planting rice after a point in time is a shallow work. You just keep on plonking them in the mud, right? It goes on happening. It's like it can be almost automated, but human labor is cheap and it's get done. A group of women starts singing, right? And the singing takes over the shallowness, and the singing is where they experience joy and experience a higher level of cognitive satisfaction. The same thing happens with tea garden laborers when they have their songs of plucking tea leaves, right? And there are similar examples of Australians sitting on the ranch and playing their guitar, right? If you have watched that movie Australia, I think it was Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman or somebody there, right? You would see that, right? So a lot of country music, a lot of stuff coming out of that. So what I'm trying to put across is human beings always try to elevate a mundane experience into something which is higher than what it is. And by the way, something which is deep today will become shallow tomorrow because it becomes a habit. The tendency of the human mind is to push it to the back of the mind and make it a habit. That's why they say it's habitual now. For the first time you are driving on a certain road, you don't know, you are careful. The next time you become, and the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time you just don't care. That's the time when you start enjoying A.R. Rahman or Bon Jovi or your Bruce Springsteen over your car stereo. The day that there is a road change, it becomes slightly more deeper work. So you have to take a small alley and go through that, and you can't be enjoying the music anymore. Because now stuff which was habitual has become more cognitively demanding. Am I making sense with you on this? Right? It's a process, guys. It's what we do. If we do it every day it becomes shallow.
Habit.
It becomes habitual. Right? Whereas when it is new, it remains very, very deep. And that is one of the reasons why children get bored playing with the same toy. Because the first time it's deep work. It's cognitively demanding for them. The next time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, they don't want to make the house with the same Lego. Because they know it all. The formula has got stuck into them. It has become automated. Right? They can do it quicker, faster. Time and motion studies say you take less time. You're right. Okay. So can you give me some examples of, what is your
Ravi, I have a question here. Sorry, I mean, in my list, I have a few which I'm still a little bit dicey whether it's deep or shallow.
Hmm.
Primarily because I kind of get a notion that deep also would essentially mean where I'm putting a lot more focus on and I'm being more mindful of it. Can I say that? Is
Mhm.
that
Yes, that is
can that be a deep work? Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes, that is exactly. Some work do not never remain shallow. So, for example, writing a check.
For me here, I put prayer. I do a daily
Yeah,
prayer. I
right,
mean, I'm just saying that's not shallow work for me, although it is ingrained in me. I mean, but
right.
for me that is deep work. Can I say that, or
Yes,
is it
it
a
is.
wrong?
It is. It is.
Okay.
It
Mhm.
is.
Does it require your full attention? That's
Yeah,
the
it
question
does.
you'll be
It
asking.
does. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Then
Yes,
it's
it does.
definitely deep work.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, interacting with a customer doesn't matter how many times you do it. So, for example, Rohini manages a group of people, engineers who interact with Dell customers. Every time they interact, she tells them it is deep work, right, Rohini?
Yeah, Ravi. Yes, Ravi.
And the moment they start taking it as shallow, you know, productivity suffers. Okay, so that's a very important element of this, right? So what I would like to give you is, I will quickly play for you the rest of the video and then I'll hand it over to Shija to see how you can create pockets of deep work. What is the methodology of operationalizing this entire conversation? Okay, making are we ready to move forward on this, right? So let's see this, how do you overcome this attention residue? Because attention residue is a major thing, huh? You cannot switch between deep and shallow just like that. I mean, I can give you an example from my side. I always thought that I could read on the flight. Prior to COVID, I used to travel a lot for my work, and it meant that the flight time was a very, very wasted time. So, like all people who think that they're very busy in life, I thought that would be the best time for me to read. And I tried to do it, but believe me, even if I read 10 pages, I could not remember 10 points ever. So I gave up, and I thought that that is not the best space to do deep work, because there's too much of attention residue by neighbors, by people in the flight, that keeps me busy. So I thought that's not the best place to do deep work. Okay, with or without a headphone. All right. So let me take you to the rest of the video. Yeah. Are you able to see my screen? Yes. Up your volume. I'm going to be cutting my volume off so that you can listen more easily.
They should eat for lunch. There is a way to incorporate deep work and escape the constant distraction. Here Here are a few strategies you can use. Number 1. The easiest way to start deep work sessions is to transform them into a regular habit. Adding routines and rituals to your working life is designed to minimize the amount of your limited willpower necessary to transition into a state of unbroken concentration. If you suddenly decide in the middle of a distracted afternoon spent web browsing to switch your attention to cognitively demanding tasks, you'll draw heavily from your finite willpower to direct your attention. Such attempts will therefore frequently fail. On the other hand, if you deployed smart routines and rituals, perhaps a set time and a quiet location used for your deep tasks each afternoon, you'd require much less willpower to start and keep going. In other words, to generate a rhythm for this work removes the need for you to invest energy in deciding if and when you're going to go deep. For a novice, somewhere around 1 hour a day of intense concentration seems to be the limit, while for experts, this number can expand to as many as 4 hours. Deep work is best practiced early in the morning, typically at the time you will have no distractions. Number 2. Allow yourself to be lazy. Regularly resting your brain improves the quality of deep work. So when you work, work hard. But when you're done, be done. Another key commitment to succeed is to create a shutdown ritual. Only the confidence that you're done with work until the next day can convince your brain to downshift to the level where it can begin to recharge for the next day. Put another way, trying to squeeze a little more work out of your evenings might reduce your effectiveness the next day enough that you end up getting less done if you had instead respected a shutdown. Number 3. Schedule in advance when you'll use the internet and then avoid it altogether outside of these times. Write it down on a notepad and record the next time you're allowed to go online. Until you arrive at the time, absolutely no network connectivity is allowed, no matter how tempting. The point is that we increasingly recognize that these tools fragment our time and reduce our ability to concentrate. This is especially dangerous after the workday is over, where the freedom in your schedule enables internet to become central to your leisure time. Such behavior is dangerous as it weakens your mind's general ability to resist distraction, making deep work difficult later when you really want to concentrate. In other words, when it comes to relaxation, don't default to whatever catches your attention at the moment, but instead dedicate some advanced thinking to how you want to spend your free time.
You're on mute, Ravi, I think so. No?
I said, if you want to take a snapshot and keep this with you, you can do this, or I am going to forward you a link to this video. This is publicly available on YouTube any which way. Okay. So what are your key takeaways from this?
And one way, I think I'm glad that I'm doing one or two of what is already mentioned, especially on the internet time. I used to be, I would say, around 4 5 months back, especially on WhatsApp. I'm not on Facebook or on any other, and I'm on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn and WhatsApp I keep using quite a bit, and I used to get like that FOMO thing is gets it stuck on me. But I make a conscious effort to have spend just half an hour, 45 minutes in a day, which I won't say it's scheduled, but either in the morning or in the evening, depends on how my work gets shaped. Structured, but it's just that slot, as simple as that. I won't touch it
Right. Right.
before on that's been very helpful for me, and I think I get. I mean, my family appreciates it.
So haven't heard from Sharat, Rukmini, Riaz Bhai. Haven't heard from you at all today.
Yeah.
Juliet as well. Any
Yeah.
thought? What are your takeaways from this bit?
Um, uh,
Shija, she'll tell you how
yeah,
to.
Ravi, I already spoke, by the way,
Okay. Right.
shared my thoughts. But
Right.
but anyhow, but I like this attention residue part and scheduling internet out time off or something like that. So maybe that's what will make us a little unproductive and all. You watch too many of these messages or something like that, and you end up unnecessarily responding or paying some attention, actually makes us engaged but not productive.
Yeah.
So if we cultivate the habit of um, actually trying to do some deep work, I definitely see an advantage there. Thanks for that.
I'll share a personal nugget with you. I have stopped watching TV between
Mhm.
8 p.m. and 11 p.m. completely.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Right. I just even if I have that time, many days I do not have a call at that time or something is not there. I don't watch TV then. Right.
Okay.
I just don't watch any TV because what is the propensity at that time, right? What gets played out at homes, right? So I don't want my mind, right? Others do in the family, right? But I don't want my mind to be taken over by some of that because it is not leaving me with thoughts that allow me to do deep work later. And I do a lot of deep work late in the night. I've seen that it kind of somewhere comes in between. I have seen it interfering with my relationships. I'm being vulnerable and I'm sharing this, right? So I trust you that you will keep this to yourself, but I don't see it to be very productive. That's my thought process. Not urging you, but just
Uh,
yeah. Riaz bhai.
Hi Ravi. See that I was just listening to your class. See, my most of work will be done on WhatsApp because we have to do a lot of follow-ups with our sales team.
Fantastic.
So while doing this, no, I unconsciously go to the other groups also and check out the messages. And while reading, I spend a lot of time. So the distraction will come while I was doing the deep work. The distraction will take taken by other groups' messages also.
Yeah. So
So that's the thing I need to convert.
one of the suggestions that I give to a lot of people who are in the sales force like you is that be very careful with which groups do you want to be part of, right? And
Hmm.
also what you may want to do is make notifications from some of these group as mute so that they don't give you a false alarm. Only workplace group notifications come up on your screen. So be a little careful about it. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Shija, right? And we will kind of move forward. All right. There we go. So you have been able to differentiate between deep work and shallow work, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what kind of changes you need to do to make these things happen, right? Okay. So over to you, Shija. You can take over from here, right?
Yes, thank you, Ravi. Just on your point of what you brought up about not watching TV between 8 and 11. So there is this concept of a diet. Okay, we're all familiar with our keto and paleo and veg diets, but there's something called as low information diet.
Hmm.
And just like any other diet, all the physical diets that we do, this is a difficult one to do as well. So this is about, because we are so constantly, seeking to be kept informed. We want to know what's happening around the world. It's always touted as being, you need to be in the know of everything.
Mhm.
But if you look at what's happening in the media and what's happening around the world today, I think there is a lot of research that supports that it is really not necessary to be fully informed all the time, right? So you can try this low information diet, which would mean that you pick out a couple of, activities, be it watching TV or checking some of your information blogs or news items or WhatsApp messages and these things. Try and cut that down little by little, and try that for a couple of days and see if it makes an impact in your life. What happens to you when you don't have that information? Is it making a huge impact, or is it something that you don't miss at all? So that's a diet that I would recommend you try.
Shija, just in the side of
Yeah,
a
Sridhar and Ravi,
just a second, guys. Shija, in the
I
side of a
will second both of your thoughts. See, when this COVID started, March, April time frame, I used to watch a lot of news. So the information that gets bombarded, I was not able to sleep till 2 or 3 in the morning. So
Mm-hmm.
because I am awake, what I used to do, I used to watch Netflix, Amazon. So at one point in time, I stopped watching news at all, and that made me like sleep peacefully. At least like
Mm-hmm.
gradually it happened. Like I got to sleep at 10 or 11. So rightly pointed out by both of you, like this is a time like 8 to 11, or is a time that you have to have a peaceful conversation with your family, or you have to do something else rather than watching this routine mundane stuff which is all bombarded, which does not make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. In fact, I've also done that myself, because I mean, where I live, we don't get too many English channels. The only thing that we get to see is BBC, and it's 7:30 to 8:30 is when I'm like tuned in to watch that. And then off late, since COVID, I mean, a lot of changes in our lives have happened during this period, and I just gave it up, the 7:30 to 8:30 watching BBs, because I noticed myself anyways in the afternoon I'm checking, NDTV and BBC and everything on my phone again. In the evening before going to bed, you're checking it again. So just take away. So the morning time is really important for us. So taking it away, I think it's kind of given me an hour more to do something more, meaningful and deep. So yes, I think a lot of us are trying that, and it was difficult in the beginning, but I guess one gets used to it
the
eventually.
the other thing that I want to point out here is news fast. That's something that a lot of people are doing, especially in some of my American friends and clients have talked to me about it. They do it typically, when things get heated up. So it's like what you said, Karthik, consciously turning your back, right? And they have to do some research, they have to do some work which is like pending. Their deadlines are there. They're not able to concentrate, right? So they go through a process of news fast. You can try and do it. See, you will realize that it makes you very uneasy. Think of spending a day without your phone. I mean, even if you have informed everybody, you are on holiday. Try to think of a day where you don't have any access to your phone. It is just not possible, and I'm equally guilty. Huh? I plead guilty. I'm not speaking from the priest's pulpit to say that I'm holier than thou. I plead guilty that I cannot do it myself. It is so ingrained in us. Okay, so Shija, go ahead. I mean, if
Yeah.
hmm, right.
So we talked about deep work and shallow work, and how do we distinguish what creates value for us in the long term? How can we be, forward looking with the kind of activities that we engage in, right? So when we talk about productivity, as Ravi mentioned, there's always this focus on doing things, uh, we are so tied to the time boundness of certain activities, that we think that by getting through our to-do list, all of us love our to-do list. Makes us feel very powerful when we finish checking off everything that we needed to do in a day. um, So here what we are inviting you to do is to look at your to-do list and look at the nature of these tasks. Are these tasks deep work or shallow work? And how do I make space for more deep work in my day, in my week, and through my schedule? So um, there are a lot of tools out there, and I'm sure this is one that most of you must be familiar with, right? The priority matrix. This is something that comes up in most of the time management trainings that you may have attended. Um, what we are trying to emphasize today is to look at the same matrix, about time management matrix, and see how you can plot your tasks from the perspective of your understanding now of deep and shallow work, right? So as you look at your task, you have your list of tasks that you do, right? And as you try to plot it, we'll talk about how you uh, put your task across the various quadrants, but keep this vector, deep versus shallow, at the center of doing this exercise. And that's very important because the matrix as such is not something new. It's quite familiar to all of us. So anyone here who has not heard of the priority matrix? It's also called as the Eisenhower matrix,
Yeah,
quite
Eisenhower.
popularized by, it was Stephen Covey who kind of popularized this matrix. And it talks about how you distinguish between tasks that are urgent and tasks that are important.
In fact, that is the very crux of the matter. We most of the times we kind of coalesce the two, or we are not able to differentiate the two in our mind's eye. We think everything that is urgent is important. Everything that is urgent may not necessarily be important. Everything that is important may not necessarily be urgent. Urgency is a factor which is a function of amount of time left. Importance is a factor of which is a function of the inherent value that that particular task generates. So there is in this the x-axis and the y-axis have to be very religiously differentiated. If you do not do that, right, then it can create a lot of muddle in our mind. Okay. So what I would like you to do is, let's do this experiment for ourselves. You can draw this matrix on the piece of paper that you have now with you, right? I mean, and you tell me, where are you spending most of your day?
Mm.
Just so that you have a reckoner, we will keep the previous slide on for you, so that you can
Right. Mm.
you kind of get to uh, have some kind of a reference point. Any guesses where are you spending most of your time, guys? If you would have numbered them, you can plot the numbers in each of the quadrants.
It's coming mostly important, not urgent for me.
Okay. So if you can do a percentage distribution, Vivek, and I request all of you to do that. Say, for example, you have like a 12-hour or a 15-hour day, right? And then you are kind of, by the way, an 8-hour sleep is a very important thing. So it should always come there, right? But I'm
It's a
taking,
myth.
it's a myth, right? Yeah. So if you take that off, let's talk about the rest of the 16 hours or 12 hours that we have. How would you percentage-wise distribute this?
Ravi, by the way, what is the values clarification in not urgent and important quadrant?
Values clarification is how important is the how valuable is this thing for me? What are my values? Is this going to be you know is this morally correct to do? Is this ethically correct to do? Is this the right
Okay.
thing I'm doing? Because there are many times
Okay.
we are caught in what we call as ethical dilemma, right? The task
Yeah.
is, if I take this decision, it will give me profit, but this is not the right thing to do, right? So you do a
Yeah.
value clarification. We also call it finding your compass activities, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Morally correct to
Mm-hmm.
do.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So anybody who spends like 50% of their time in quadrant one,
This is Juliet. I have I approximately I have judged that I spend around 40% in quarter one.
okay, quadrant one, 40%, okay. Anybody?
Yes, no, hello.
Yeah, Juliet is at 40. Yeah, anybody more than 40 for Juliet and quadrant one?
For me, I'm close to 40% again for the quadrant one.
Okay.
And by the way, I've taken away the 18 hours, I mean, sorry, 8 hours of sleep, and
Yeah.
I'm doing the, okay.
Ah, I'm assuming it is all sleep. I'll leave it that. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Waking hours.
right. Waking hours.
So mine, so sorry, I think made a mistake. So mine will be around 56 percentage if I just do a rough
Hmm.
math of excluding on 9 on 69 hours is what I've put for it is coming to important urgent activities.
Okay.
9
So
hours.
you do not need to be very arithmetically precise, but
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
if
yeah.
you
50,
take a sense of it, right?
50%. Yeah.
Right. If you take a sense of it, anybody spending more than 20% in quadrant four, that even 20% is a huge number there.
No, I'm not. Nowhere close to it.
20% in quarter four.
Yeah, 33% here, Riaz.
In quadrant four,
No, not quadrant four, quadrant one.
quadrant one. Okay. So how do you think you can bring down quadrant one? Over to you, Shija. How do you think you can bring down quadrant one?
So quadrant one, when you looked at the task that you put in quadrant one, what was the primary qualifier? What are these tasks about? If someone could share.
No, for me, it is most of office work is what I've put there as important urgent generally.
Hmm.
And I mean, the other ones are there like anyway, I spend family time, I do my exercise, reading books, and a few of the things which are listed on as important but not urgent. And not
Hmm.
important, not urgent. Urgent obviously was WhatsApp or LinkedIn and stuff. That is not important, not urgent for me. So for me, mostly the important urgent was on the office work umbrella.
So does all office work qualify as important urgent? What was your rationale?
Uh,
Because I'm sure, in a given day, you will have work that's deadline driven. But there is also office work that doesn't necessarily have to be
Yeah,
done.
within the office work, yeah, I agree. Within the office work, it's not necessary that I have to finish everything that day and then move on. That might be, but actually, I work 12 hours, so I put 9 hours as important and urgent. The remaining 3 hours for office work is not something I need to prioritize. But that's the only thing which actually came up here.
Hmm.
Sheej, I'm a bit surprised also when I see this. Isn't there anything else for me important and urgent? I don't know. Mm, I
You
don't know.
work a lot.
I'm a workaholic for sure.
Yes,
Self-confessed.
definitely. Right. So to talking about the urgent and important matrix, this is these are tasks which are very deadline focused, time driven. Okay, and if you don't finish these tasks, there are consequences. So there is no choice around not finishing these tasks, because the moment you delay these tasks, they have either consequences in your career, in your life, with your health, things like that. So mostly deadline driven tasks are the ones that you will put in the urgent and important matrix. And that's why the quadrant is called the quadrant of necessity, because you have very little choice in terms of not getting them done.
Yep.
So if you've put, just take a second look at the tasks that you've put in the urgent and important matrix, and see how much of these are actually deadline driven tasks. And if there is no time associated with those tasks, then there is some room to play around with moving these tasks somewhere else. But anything that's deadline driven needs to stay in the urgent and important matrix.
Yeah, Teja, I have actually some points like children getting vaccinated, then going to the medical emergencies. These points are also there in my first quadrant. Apart from like meeting deadlines of the office.
So, Shisha, can I
Yeah,
take this one?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, here is a very important thing, Juliet, and good that you brought that vaccination thing and some of those things. So, typically, we think this is quadrant one is only prioritization. It is not so. If you typically look at, say, for example, a planned activity like taking your child out for a vaccination, now you
Mm-hmm.
know that the vaccination is supposed to happen on a certain date, right? So I would ideally create a plan for it and put it in quadrant two, so that on that day when I'm taking the child out to the doctor or for that visit, I know that I do not have any other overhanging activities which are there, because that's a prevention activity. You know what I mean to say? That is like preventive health checkup. So if you go for a health checkup or a blood blood check test or any ECG or anything of that kind, right? Or a dental checkup every 3 months, that's prevention. That's not exactly a quadrant one activity. Quadrant one activity is the activity where you don't have control over time. Time is driving the importance of that thing. A great
Uh,
example to explain to
like
you. Yeah.
uh, yeah, actually, like I have this point also. Like in case of medical emergencies and all, then also like in case of medical emergency of my children, then also that will fall under quadrant one.
Yeah, medical emergencies would fall under quadrant one. Emergency, by its very definition, is unexpected, is something that is triggered in time. You have to attend to it right away. Right? That is why it is called an emergency. If it is not an emergency, if it's a preventive thing, then it better be in quadrant two. Because anything in quadrant one, you lose control over that. Time takes over your control. That is why a lot of people end up thinking that managing quadrant one is the only bit of time management they need to do, which is a very, very short-sighted, myopic view of things. If you have to be having a really productive life, you have to do things more in quadrant two. Let me give you this story. Have you heard about this quadrant two firefighting? Firefighting. Where would you put it? Quadrant one or quadrant two? By its very definition.
Firefighting. Quadrant one.
All of us would put it in quadrant one, right? But the drills that happen in our offices, the very fact that somebody
Uh,
takes care of the time to put those fire extinguishers in place, those labels of where the fire exit window is, that is done when there is fire, or it is done when there is no fire and in a
No,
different time?
it's a prior practice, like before the real situation.
Right. So that is called quadrant 2 firefighting. Right. That is called quadrant 2 firefighting, because you have fought the fire before it actually took place. Now people who do not fight fire that way end up blocking their exit doors, have gas cylinders on their terrace, and when there is fire hazards, people jump from windows, and there is more casualty because of jumping than because of fire.
Because there is no preparedness.
Yeah. So preparedness is focus. It requires you to focus. Right? Shisha, how do you think we can take care of quadrant 3? Why don't you, explore on that a little for all of us?
Hi.
Ravi, hi, this is Rukmini, Ravi Shija. I do have a question over here.
Hmm.
See, when you first showed us this priority matrix, and you asked us to put down what we do in a day in the matrix, I saw most of whatever I do came up in quadrant two, like mostly work related.
Right.
Because my understanding of this was, most of the work that I do at work is usually not urgent. Like, it's important, sure,
Hmm.
but it's urgent only when it's if there's something that I've kept until the last minute usually, or
Yeah,
if it's a very important meeting. But
yeah,
those things are not something that you can control. Those meetings are quite ad
yeah,
hoc, you would say.
yeah. And in that, then you should look at what is deep work that you are doing. Are you spending sufficient time for deep work?
Hmm.
If those different things that you do in quadrant 2, some could be shallow, some could be deep.
Right.
Right?
Yes, those come up in I think quadrant three.
So depends, depends from person to person. Typically, a lot of shallow work comes in quadrant 3. You know,
Right. Mhm.
Shisha, you want to take that up and explain?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just going back to what the point that Rukmini raised, it is possible that you will find most of your activities in quadrant 2.
Hmm.
And that is a very, very good place to be, because even if it is, I can put making lunch and dinner in quadrant 2 because it's a planned activity. I'm not rushed about it. I have a certain time that I do this. It moves into quadrant 1 when I don't do it when I need to do it.
Hmm.
And then it becomes an urgency. You have children coming back from school, or you have to rush into another meeting, and then your lunch or breakfast is not ready, right? That's when that task moves into a quadrant 1, right? So if we can limit, or if we can contain our tasks in quadrant 2, which means that you have planned through those tasks, they do not have, and you also have flexibility on in terms of how you do it, but there is no urgency in terms of deadlines that you would miss.
Yeah.
Then it's fine. It's if you have most of your tasks in quadrant 2, then it's a good thing, right? Which means that if any kind of emergencies come up, you still have time to focus. But if how do you move, let's say paying bills? Paying bills should be a quadrant 2 task. When does it become a quadrant 1 task? When you reach the last day. When you have 30 days to pay your bills and you choose to do it on the very last day, that's when it becomes a quadrant 1 task. But if you've addressed it within the, that 30 days period, then it doesn't become a quadrant, there's no urgency associated with it, right? So at the center of quadrant 2 is your ability to plan, your ability to focus, and your ability to strategize.
Exercise, and this is, that Bill's thing triggers a certain conversation that I had with a Microsoft group earlier this week. So there's this one guy who was talking about he constantly paying late fee charges. One of the things that you could do is automate some of this. Why not put a standing instruction, right? That it kind of gets auto debited if you can do that. Or say, for example, untoward pesky calls that you get in the middle of a meeting. Somebody tries to sell you a credit card at 10:30 in the morning on a Monday. It happens to me all the time. And typical answer that that person receives is, sorry, I'm not available to take your call. I will call you back. And if it is an unknown number, it obviously gets deprioritized. So now the point is, if you do not have that setup, uh, that automated message, you are always under the FOMO, the fear of missing out thought process, that it could be a quadrant one thing that I have got missed out. But Monday 10:30 is an absolute quadrant two time for me. I cannot roll it out to anybody else. Okay, am I cutting ice with you, right? Okay, so see, if you can automate some of these, some of these people who always want your time, but they don't add value to you, you can avoid that, right? Binge watching of television, but going out on a planned movie with your family is what, quadrant 4 or quadrant 2? Going out on a planned movie with your family,
Quadrant 2.
Yeah.
don't mistake that to be a quadrant 4 activity. Going out on a holiday with your family is quadrant 2. And by the way, when husbands forget their anniversaries, which are supposed to be a quadrant 2 activity, they end up doing it in quadrant 1, and the results are very astoundingly, whatever. Right? You get where we are coming from? You don't know. You don't. I mean, so there is this friend of mine, and he taught me this, neighbor of mine, who used to always gift gold to his better half, and we were at the same salary band. So I used to ask him, man, how do you manage this? So he says, no, you don't know, Ravi. What I do is, Tanishq has this sale in the month of October, and I have this planned. My anniversary is on December 22nd. I go and buy in October and I keep it. So imagine how effective he was vis-a-vis I was. And for me, even buying a bouquet at 10:30 in the evening while coming back from Dell on the anniversary date was a very big thing to do. Right? So this is the impact of this on your life, right? I mean, together, if you are saying how productive you are, okay, doing a course, doing something for your future. Where is it? Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. Learn
Quadrant 2?
Quadrant 2.
quadrant 2. If you don't do that course and you have an internal job posting, where does it move to?
Quadrant 1.
One.
And then,
Quadrant one, and I think eventually nowhere.
and eventually, very good. You understand?
Eventually, we will become not important, not urgent. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know what is that quadrant called, right? I mean,
Important.
yeah. So this is a very important thing for us to kind of mobilize ourselves on, right? So what I would like you to do is think where you are spending your day, right? Think where you are spending your day and how you want to take it forward. Ideally, you should spend. Yeah, go ahead, Shija.
Just quickly, for those who want to know, the quadrant 3.
Hmm.
Quadrant 3
Yeah,
is
yes,
are those
yes.
that are driven by, urgency. So as the quadrant is called, it's the quadrant of deception. So when the phone rings, you pick it up because it's ringing, right? So when the doorbell chimes, you have to go and answer it. When you hear that, SMS uh, beep, you respond to it. When you're busy working and your co-worker just comes by to say hello, you respond to it. These are the activities. So the most of these activities that fall in quadrant 3 are externally driven. One, they're not planned. Secondly, it's not something that you initiate, but it's an external event that happens that you feel the urge to respond to, right? And there is this concept called, we are driven by what we call as mere urgency, and we feel that if something seems urgent, it's important and we need to address it immediately.
right? Without really looking at the nature of the task or what we are going to get out of it, the value of the task, or whether this task really can be something that we can choose not to do. We don't think in these circumstances when we are more, operating in the quadrant of deception. And this is very, very strong for our culture because we are very relationship oriented. So you would have planned your day, you would have decided that I'm going to do some chat, deep work between this hour and this hour. And then a friend calls you and needs help. Culturally, we are programmed to respond to things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And therefore it becomes a quadrant of deception. I mean, absolutely agree with Shija. Now, one of the things I want to ask you guys, and think about this. In your office, you decide to be in quadrant 2, but the rest of your team is working in quadrant 1. How
Hmm.
productive do you think you will be? Do you think you can sustain your quadrant 2?
No.
So the key thing is you should try and teach this to your friends and family. You alone cannot. You will have limited, you would have limited what I would say as effectiveness of doing this thing alone. If you are able to teach this thing to people, there are two things that will happen. They will become committed to your thought process. You will become committed more to this thought process because you're teaching. So this is one thing that I would like you to do as a task in the next couple of weeks. Try and teach this to your, if you are in a group, take a session with your group on this time metrics. Right? Try and talk to your family members. Say that, whatever we do, can we do it here? Kakoli was talking about, her deep work being cooking lunch, dinner, and breakfast. It becomes a quadrant 1 activity when she doesn't have the right vegetables with her, probably. She has to do something. She has to probably go and run and get that, or ask somebody to get that for her. You understand what I'm trying to say? So if you're planful, if everybody in the system is working towards that, you start becoming more and more agile. This is where agility is really. What is agility? Agility is ability to deliver a great value, a higher value. Okay.
And the physical impact of working through from quadrant 1 is that there is more stress, and this
Yes.
whole concept of burnout happens because of that. Because if you have your day, a 12-hour day, filled with things that need to be completed on the very same day, can you imagine the amount of stress that your body is going through, having days like that? And we all have days like that, and a series of consecutive days where it's always about, you have like 10 things on your list which needs to get done on that same day, and then the next day starts. It's a cycle, right? And that's why it's important to sort of look at this matrix and see how can I operate more from the quadrant 2.
Right.
I
So
have a point here to make, Ravi and Shija. I mean, I mean, I face this, I think, quite often, but I've tried to kind of work around it. Is the aspect of some reports or some important thing which my manager would ask me to do. For him, it might be important and urgent, but for
Hmm.
me, I might have something else better off to do, right? And but honestly, I mean, I cannot go back and tell him that I have something else. I mean, that never happens. I mean, unfortunately, that's how it's at least. I mean, for me, it gets very difficult to kind of push back per se. Probably that's something I need to work on. But having said that, what could be important urgent for someone would fall into your bucket, and that will become important urgent for you as well, one way or the other. Although you might probably want to treat it as not important urgent,
Right.
yeah,
becomes that way. And what then happens is other tasks in the not important I mean important urgent will get will get delayed, or whatever,
Right.
right? So that tends to keep happening for me, for sure. I mean, and that probably even relates to the fact that I work a few more longer hours to complete those that are important urgent on a given day, right?
Hmm.
How do
Hmm.
you, I mean, I cannot go back with this metrics with my boss and say that, you know what, I mean, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And it's a practical thing. I'm sure a lot of people in the corporate space would be
Absolutely.
facing it, but yeah, I'm just sharing
Yeah.
my perspectives here.
I think
Right,
what you
right.
just
but
described is, sorry, go ahead.
Rightly said, it happens with most of the mid-level managers also. So the person sitting above the manager gives some works, and that is important to him, and that has to be done by us through only. And the earlier the important and not urgent, which we have already focused, we have planned for that, that gets delayed. That also happens actually. That comes
True.
come and falls into urgent in the very next day.
Yeah.
True.
And the to-do list gets scuttled, your calendar is hijacked, you know, and you feel like the tomato in the sandwich.
Correct, and that's where the time management doesn't come in picture.
Right. So, that is the recipe for the segue to our next session, where we tell you how do you influence without authority, right? That is,
And just before you move on to that, my just offering a simple suggestion. So the what everyone just talked about is quadrant three activity. Externally, something falls in your plate. Now, if you know that your work life is going to be beset with these kind of activities, then you can make that a quadrant two activity. You plan an hour in your work life, keeping it free for any of these unwanted things that will land on your plate. Then it becomes easier because it's because you don't have that an hour in your schedule that you're having to rearrange your own personal to-do list, right? But if you have a buffer in your schedule, then that's where you can fit in all these unexpected tasks. I mean, I don't know how far it's effective, but it's a good thing because I've seen people do that. Like on a calendar, they would just block a chunk 1 hour where they're not doing anything,
hmm.
and that's when they will address anything that comes just at the moment, or something related to something that your boss or someone requests you to do.
I'll share a personal story with you in just 2 minutes on this. I had this boss who was very fond of me, and always used to give me tasks on a Friday evening, right? So I started seeing that somehow my Friday evening trying to go home early wouldn't ever happen. So what I realized started doing is that I started keeping everything off my Friday evening. Right from Friday afternoon, I kept that time free. And around
Hmm.
2 o'clock in the Friday afternoon, I would go and proactively ask my boss, "Boss, kuch hai kya? Do you want me to do something? Do you want me to work on some deck? Do you want me to give you any report?" So once I started doing it, you know, the things started moving around. Believe me, these are what we call as micro influencing activities. Once you are on the top of it, so, and then once I did it twice, thrice, he says, "You come and ask me on a Friday, no? What is that you need?" "Yes, boss, if you have something, I can do it. If it cannot be done, then maybe I will see." So he also started running out, because it invariably happened for around 10 odd Fridays that it was repeatedly coming on a Friday evening. So I started going to him at 2 o'clock on Friday, and I kept my calendar. This is the way I managed it. Exactly as Shija said, I created a pocket in my quadrant 2 on Friday between 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Nothing. Zero. No sessions. I would even avoid. The point is, many of us do not plan our calendars. And it does not matter how many calendars we carry in how many devices. We have phone calendars, we have laptop calendars, we have lots of calendars everywhere, but we do not plan our calendars. Plan your quadrant 2 on a Saturday evening for 15 minutes. You will be able to see that you are being a lot more productive. Start planning it for a week, then start planning it for a month, then start planning it for a quarter. At least put your important things. Not everything, it will just fill up like 1 hour. You will see that, oh, on the 15th of October, I have this with so and so. It is very important to do that, guys, because remember, time cannot be managed. That is the last message I want to leave you with today. We are going to teach you a little bit of what we wanted to teach you today on polarity management and systems thinking as a part of your influencing thing, because you actually need to influence a system. And what you are saying, Vivek, is the system is burying you. So is Riaz by saying that you are not able to say no to your manager, say no to your stakeholder, and therefore it is coming and disturbing your calendar, or is kind of coming in the way of you doing deep work, right? So how do you do that? It simply cannot be done by so-called time management, because people who do so-called time management invariably end up living their life in quadrant 1, right?
Right.
They are always on the fire engine, trying to
Hmm.
douse fire caused by somebody else, right? Okay, so we need to do Q2 firefighting. How do we need to do that? What skills do we require? How do we push back to people, up, down, and across? That is what we will learn in the next session. Sharat,
Hmm.
your observation before we
Yeah,
take.
I felt that maybe if you basically prove to your boss that you are the deep work guy, you are the de facto deep work guy, I think you can negotiate with him better, and he will not push too many things, or he at least he will be reasonable with you. That's what I feel. Or else you may not, if you are not uh, proving yourself to be that de facto guy for the deep work, then I think you will be bullied, I guess.
Yes, that's a very, very, very
Yeah, I mean,
brilliant point. Yeah.
yes, and we are going to talk about it in the next session. How do you create that authority without positional authority? That
Yeah,
what we talked about, Sharat, is the authority of expertise, right?
yeah,
How do you
yeah.
become that expert in your team that nobody bugs you, right? You
Hmm.
come across as the guy who will do the undoable, that nobody
Yeah,
else can
yeah,
do.
exactly.
How do you become
Hmm.
that guy? How do you influence without authority? There are some
Hmm.
6, 7 strategies. We will talk about it.
Okay.
We will share with you. And
Hmm.
again,
Very curious about that.
yeah, very research based and very time tested. You will see that, right? What I will do is I will also share with you, with everyone, what are some of the key messages you're taking back from the session. You can again put it on this mentee thing, right? And it will create a little bit of a bubble chart for you. Bubble chart is
Hmm.
like those, the charts that you see in comic books.
So as you're setting that up, I just wanted to say a couple of closing things. I know we didn't go into quadrant 4, but please don't think that quadrant 4 needs to be eliminated completely. Okay,
Yeah.
Ravi, remember the research that we were talking about.
Yeah.
People who spend a lot of time in quadrant 1 are the people who have the propensity, because they are so stressed, that they are the ones who tend to want to spend a lot more time in quadrant 4. Okay, but it doesn't mean that you have to eliminate quadrant 4 completely. Pick a few tasks that help you unwind. Okay, but and that can you kind of helps you recharge for the next day. But don't be driven into quadrant 4 because you're trying to escape the stress and the tension, and having to firefight whole day. That shouldn't be pushing you into quadrant 4. Just think about that, right? All 4 quadrants are important, but it's how you manage your tasks, um, to balance it in a manner that you're able to be more efficient and productive.
Okay. Shisha, can you give me back the host rights once so that I can just probably take this over? Right?
Sure.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, guys, don't ever think that you can, not important, not urgent, everything in life is going to go away. You also sometimes need this time for unplanned unwinding. That is required. It is never going to be zero, right? All the quadrants. But try and see, as she just said, spend less and less time there. If it is planned unwinding, you are more in charge. You are better off trying to do that. Okay. So there are mentee messages which are kind of popping up. Let me try and uh, again it is showing as
Just a moment. I think I gave it to the wrong person.
okay.
Okay.
Not a problem. On
Hmm.
we are very, we are very concerned about our ownership rights.
I think now it's with uh,
Okay.
Raj.
Okay. Raj, can you give it to me? Okay.
I'm trying to, okay? So just give me a moment.
Right. Okay.
And there's another thing that I think I forgot to mention about quadrant two. There are some things that we put in quadrant two that we are not very excited to do. Like, for example, health related exercise, or it could be something, related to developing for the future. And these are not things that you find exciting, but they need to be done, right? So there is a technique called, I don't know if you've heard of this one, called eat the frog.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are tasks that need to be done and you are not very fond of these tasks, they say that eat it first. Make that the first task that you do in the day and get it over with.
Do the difficult things first in one way. I mean, not
Yeah,
this. Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
something
But
that you kind
it's
of.
probably one task. You pick the one that you're least likely. Like for me, it's exercise. So, it's Sunday morning. I do not give myself an option. I just finish it the first thing I get up. That's it. Done. Over. Then I don't have to think about it till next Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got like five people talking about it. Some more of you can see the screen now, right? So we have some of these. Guys, simple to-do lists in this complex times will not work.
Hmm.
If you think you can make a to-do list and you can randomly strike away, that was a, I would say, a mid 20th century phenomena. Right. That is not going to work. What is required for you is to see which is deep work, and then give yourself that time to do deep work and do that work at that time. Quadrant 2 activities should be deep work. If they are shallow work, automate them, delegate them, be okay with the imperfections. Somebody else will not make the curry as well as you do. No problem. You know, it's okay to be imperfect with that, because what you are trying to drive perfection in is much important than that, right? So it's your own importance metrics that it needs to come through. So what is deep work for you? Obviously, when you look at MF Hussein's picture, do you guys remember MF Hussein, the guy, right, who was a great painter, right? He is not a guy who used to spend a lot of time going to the salon, right? So that is not something that you would have seen, right? So that, because that was a shallow work for him. Obviously, deep work was painting. So even an Einstein's picture, that should tell you what was his deep work and what was his shallow work, right? So, I mean, for me, those pictures tell me what kind of a personality they would be. Where would have they spent their quadrant to? And take time to teach this to your people, to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues. It's very important. You cannot do it alone. Dr. Kavi talks about hanging something like a poster called "I am in quadrant 2." Now, if your team members do not know this quadrant story, what effect would that have? Why is boss hanging this? What does this mean? I mean, what does this sticker mean?
We'll have more of the activity in quadrant three, like from quadrant three. We'll keep coming and asking you, what is this all about?
Your WhatsApp message, your WhatsApp status could be "I am in quadrant 2. Do not disturb. Only when it is urgent." Yeah. I've seen a lot of people talking that, right? WhatsApp only for urgent things, right? That's it, and they don't. I am not as frequent on WhatsApp. So I know someone like Riaz may not be able to do it, but then there are some groups. Again, then do a micro differentiation. Which groups do I want say the alert to pop up, right? Do I need to be on 25 different groups? People ask you. We are not able to say no. Right?
I'm not sure. I think there are a lot of people who are taking social networking holidays nowadays, right? They
Yeah.
just shut off WhatsApp